Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of my POA podcast, Black Hand and Beyond. Tonight, our topics are Siri Chief and Lindsey Peaton, a couple kids from Arizona. If you've been around POAs a while, you'll get that. So I got a full page of notes here, and of course, my memory. We have 62 photos to go through tonight, so we're going to have a long show. Lindsey will be joining us via phone. Probably, after I talk about Siri Chief and we talk about our sponsors, I want to thank Don Vernell for writing that song and giving me permission to use it in the intro. And tonight's sponsors are Damon POAs from Melbourne, Iowa, and TC Impulsive Weedo. And we'll be talking about those two. Great POA farm in Iowa and a really good up-and-coming stallion. He's one of the best going right now, Futurity Champion Sire. So that's our sponsors tonight. I want to thank everyone for reaching out about sponsorships. So we're going to get right into it tonight and start talking about Siri Chief. Of course, Siri Chief was number 2. Last week we talked about number 1, Black Hand. So it's just obvious to talk about number 2. Now I could do a trivia question, but I won't do the painful trivia question. But we won't do number 3 next week because nobody knows who he is. I do, but not many people do. It's War Paint. He didn't become very famous. So next week we're going to talk about prefixes. I'm already plugging the next show, but that's POA prefixes, JN to JNJ. It's going to be called. So we're going to have a couple great guests, Jared Katzenberger and Jeremy Stevens. Jared's from Wisconsin. Jeremy's from Kansas. They're both POA breeders, both raise their kids in POAs and stand stallions. So they'll be our guests next week, and we'll be talking about as many prefixes as we can get in an hour to an hour and a half, whatever our show will be. So, all right, we're going to get going on Siri Chief. I do just want to thank the Shane Jackson for helping me out again with all this technology. I'm just, some of this technology is a little beyond me, but I'm glad we're doing these live podcasts, and you can watch it on YouTube and on Facebook afterwards too. So, and I want to plug Jackson's Auto Family, Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, Ram. If you're going to be in Oklahoma, or I'm delivering one to Minnesota Friday, so I can deliver one in wherever you want. If you want a new Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, or something pre-owned, give me a call. Okay, let's start out with Siri Chief. So this is the most famous picture of him. And of course, the famous story of Siri Chief is the Libyan leopard story. And that's been written about. There's been a book about it. It's been talked about in POA magazines for years. The man that bred Siri Chief wasn't a POA breeder, of course. He was an Appaloosa. Well, I better not call him an Appaloosa breeder because he believed the 2 stallions he owned, Arab Tajwa Al-Kar and Siri Sheik, were Liberian leopard stallions, and he never registered them with the Appaloosa Horse Club because he had heard a story, and a lot of POA people know this story, about the 2 Arabians that were smuggled out of the Middle East, and they ended up getting bred. They weren't supposed to be bred, and they ended up getting bred, and and then they ended up, there's another picture of Siri Chief, but there's Arab Tajwa Al-Kar. That's how I pronounce it. Now, I grew up pronouncing Tajwa. Maybe it's Tajwara. It's however you want to say it. I've never heard anyone pronounce it, really, except a few old-time POA people. And his name was registered a little different than what they spelled it. But so anyway, Jim Hoffman from Oregon had this stallion and his son, Siri Sheik, who ended up in POAs as well. And this one never did, really. The Arab didn't. But he bred this stallion here to a Welsh mare in 1951, and then 52, Siri Chief was foaled. And there he is. That's kind of a rare photo of him there. And if you notice, those spots are a little different, and Siri Chief and some of the Siri horses did have unique coat patterns. They were leopards, but their spots were kind of oblong. They had the halos. So they just kind of, were unique, and they really took off in POA. Siri Chief not only was the number 2 POA ever registered, he's had the biggest impact. I know that's of any stallion ever because of his offspring and his great offspring. We're going to show pictures tonight of some modern grand champions and some good performance POAs that are related to Siri Chief. So of all the foundation sires like Black Hand, Siri Chief, Court Scottish Chieftain, Dragon, and Danny Boy, by far, he had the lasting impact, the biggest lasting impact of the 5 of those. So, the big story about Siri Chief, of course, is Paula Cooper. Paula Cooper found Siri Chief. She was a friend of Jim Hoffman's, and then she moved to Arizona to a large ranch. And her and Jim became pretty close friends. And Jim was ill in the 50s. In 1954, he was near death. And he wanted Paula to have this little pony colt that he thought was a miniature of the Arab Tajwal car. So she ended up taking him back to Arizona. Well, remember, 54, there wasn't a POA club. So you had this little 50, 51-inch leopard pony stallion, and she hauls him all the way from Oregon to Arizona. But by doing that, I mean, she, I don't think she could even fathom what was going to happen by her taking that horse to Arizona, and then what would happen next. And what did happen next is in 1955, Les Boomhauer, which we talked about last week, put an ad in the Western Horseman asking for colored ponies, and I wish I had a clip of that, but I got it in my book, Spots Included. Cheap plug there for the book. But he asked, the first person to answer that ad and write to Mason City, Iowa, with pictures, a Polaroid picture, I believe, or pictures anyway, and a veterinarian description of this little leopard pony, was Paula Cooper from Arizona, Wilcox, Arizona. And Siri Chief, the rest is history. He became the number 2 registered stallion. So with that, Paula later registered 15, 16, and 17. So 15 was a mare time forgot named Spangles. 17 was Sequin Jim. That's him right there. Sequin Jim was way ahead of his time. The only problem is, with that, he grew over the 52 inch. As you can tell there, he looks like a young Appaloosa, more than a pony from the 50s or even the early 60s. But when the height limit changed, I think his number was reinstated, or they gave him another number, but he was one of the first IDs. They pulled his papers and stuff, and it was kind of a big deal. But he went on to have, he did some stuff in Kansas and as a sire, and you still can find his name in pedigrees. But number 16 had the biggest impact of the early Siri Chiefs, and of course that's Vicky. And here it's shown when Goldenrod's sold her. Goldenrod's going to be a big part of this story because they ended up buying Siri Chief. But Vicky's big claim was as a broodmare, and in 1959 she produced this guy, Siri Super Chief. Now I know he looks a little blocky and stuff like that, but Siri Super Chief is in, hard to venture to guess, but maybe 60% of pedigrees, 80 maybe of pedigrees, and his blood went all over the country. Russell Officer had this stallion in Robinson, Kansas. He was the Polka Dot Pony Farm. So polka dots, this and that, we'll talk about some of them. I don't have many pictures of polka dots, but the old timers will remember all the polka dots. And Siri Super Chief did a great job as a sire and was Siri Chief's number 1 son for a long time. So a couple of the polka dots that really helped people was, I'm going to look at my notes a little bit, but Polka Dot's Little Heap sired 2 famous stallions. And I know there's people watching tonight that are going to remember them. There might be people watching tonight that showed these stallions or showed against them. And that's Lannon Siri Super Dot Minuteman and Lannon Siri Super Dot Chieftain. And I'm not going to name all the people related with them because I'll screw up and miss somebody, but both those stallions were loud leopard stallions. They both won national titles. They both sired foals that won, weanlings especially, both of them sired weanlings that won. And anyway, the one ended up going to Minuteman, went to Australia, and I do have a picture of him somewhere. There's the Polka Dot Pony Farm. So up in the upper left corner is Siri Super Chief, and there's a bunch of his mares and some of his offspring probably. That was in Kansas early on. So I'll get to a picture of Lannon Siri Super Spot too, but Lannon Siri Super Spot Minuteman later. So we're going to wrap up a little bit on Siri Super Chief, but like I say, because of all the polka dots And then the other one was Polka Dot Black Blisters, if somebody's heard of him. These names, I know when I talk to non-POA people, I'm sure you're the same way when you talk to your friends about POA, especially the older names. You know, those people look at you, Polka Dots Black Blisters. But he was the sire of Oz's Minute Maid. And Oz's Minute Maid was bred by the Zieglers of Ohio. She was a 1972 Futurity winner as a baby, Wheeling filly. The Batemans bought her and won Grand Champion with her in 75. So she was a famous mare. And then Batemans ended up using her as a brood mare. And she's the grand dam of Kenwell's Barmaid. So see how it all kind of ties together here, all the way from Siri Chief #2 and then to Oz's Minute Maid. She's the grand dam of Kenwell's Barmaid, one of the greatest show mares in history. So another colt that was born in 1959 in Arizona has had a long lasting impact also. And you people in the Mideast will recognize this picture. That's Siri's Spot Cash. Now, Siri's Spot Cash was in Michigan for a long time with the Earl Clark family. We're going to talk about the Clarks because they actually had Siri Chief for a while too. And why Clarks had them. Now Russell Officer was Polka Dots, Earl Clark was Totems. You remember the Totem Series and Totem Spots, names like that. So of course Totem Spots would have been by this horse, Siri's Spot Cash. One of his most famous early foals was Totem Spots Magella. And again, a great mare. She was the 1973 Grand Champion mare. High seller, I believe, in 73. The Slagles had her. A lot of different families owned her. She produced some good foals, but she was just a good-looking, way ahead of her time mare. And she was a own daughter of this guy, so that means she was an own granddaughter of Siri Chief. We're going to talk about some of the other Siri Chiefs now. Here's Totem Series Seed Bead. And I'm going to go, before I talk about her, I'm going to talk some more about Spot Cash. Sorry about that. With 62 photos, I'm going to have to whip through them pretty fast. And then talk to Lindsay too, give her time. So I hope they're watching tonight, her and her mom Diana, before she goes on air here. So anyway, this horse here, Siri's Spot Cash, he ended up going to John Stofus, a famous POA breeder, a big supporter. I used to watch John trim his hooves of his colts in the aisleway and maybe even body clip them at the Futurity. I mean, he was just a rugged, tough man and a good promoter of POAs. He had Siri's Spot Cash for a long time. I don't know what age he was when he got him, but he was probably a young teenager, the stallion was, and he kept him till his death, I think probably till 30. He lived to be an older stallion, and he ended up, the Cash is this and Cash is that. Cash is Tough Bill, won a bunch of international show classes, which is the Congress now. And so Siri's Spot Cash was a well-known stallion, and mainly he was born in Arizona, but he was mainly famous in Michigan and Ohio from the two people that owned him. Now we'll move on to Totem Series Seed Bead. She's one of the own daughters of Siri Chief, and she was from Totem Pony Farm in Michigan, the Clarks. And you see there, this is when Goldenrods had her, because Goldenrods was a big believer of Siri Chief. They loved his bloodline, so here they'd bought one of his daughters. That made sense. Here's another, here's a Siri Super Chief. We're just going to go through some pictures really quick, and then I'll go back to some statistics on Siri Chief. This is GR Siri Feather. Of course, the catalog's a treasure trove, the catalogs over the years, and spring catalogs. I have a collection of all kinds of spring sale catalogs, and then of course I have almost all the international sales catalogs, and a lot of them are wore out from, since I was 8 years old. I've been looking at most of them, so the ones that were around then. Here's Siri Sequin. She ended up in some pedigrees, and I'm glad this picture popped up because, so Paula had Siri Chief and Paula Cooper from 1959 to 1963. She bred for at least one son of his that became an international champion sire. So you had the two sons in 59. I'm going to go to my notes here. In 60, you had Jesus, it's spelled G-H-E-E-Z-I-S. It's got a hyphen in the middle. And in 61, you had Cooper Hawk. Of course, these are all Series Cooper Hawk. And 62, you had Siri's Image. He was a kind of a cool little stallion. I think he was in California for quite a while, Siri's Image. That was 62. And then in 63, Vicky produced another leopard stout colt, full brother to Siri's Super Chief, and he was Siri's Supreme Chief. And he carried all those stallions helped to make Siri Chief famous, and Paula Cooper. The Siri name, there's been over 20 Siri stallions, not all related to Siri Chief, but over 20 Siri stallions that have sired international or Congress champions. So that's quite a feat. She's one of the premier breeders of all time. She just never went around a lot to shows and sales, especially in her older age, but she had a lot of great mares and stallions that she'd raised in Arizona on the big ranch down there. So in 1962, yeah, it was the fall of 62, she leased the famous Siri Chief. By then he was already famous. She leased him to Max Allen from Minnesota, a big supporter of POA. And Max Allen, why he was in Minnesota, there was a couple foals born, Sir Gold Alcar, not Siri, they cut the I off, Sir Gold Alcar, and Leopard Lair's Siri Pete. And you see Leopard Lair's Siri Pete here on this pedigree. So, and he was one of them why Siri Chief was leased in Minnesota. Now those two stallions sired some foals, neither one became real famous, but they are noteworthy in the Siri Chief story. So, in 1964, Earl Clark from Totem's, I think it's Totem's Pony Farm in Michigan. I know I needed to have Barb on here tonight. She is a good historian. I think she lives in, forgive me if I'm wrong, but in the Mideast somewhere, Ohio or something. But anyway, Earl Clark never really got his justice as a POA breeder. The Totems were great. There was 3 grand champion Totems all around the same time. And they're just one of the farms, because they went away for a while, you know, they left early and time kind of forgot them. But us historians and people that pay attention know the impact they had on POA. So they had Siri Chief from 64 to 67. Siri Chief was in Michigan, and he had quite a few totems by them. Totem Siri Dots Enough, you may remember her. She was a Siri Chief. Totem Siri Seed Bead that I showed earlier, and then Totem Siri Debonair was a colt. Those other 2 were mares, but they were all from Michigan. Okay, so in 1967, like I said before, we got GR Super Chief's lady up here. Goldenrod Pony Farm, Keith Stone and Ray Morris, they were brother-in-laws. They had a big POA operation in Sheridan, Iowa, and they raised their kids. Both of them raised their kids in POAs. I talked to Carl Stone last night on the phone. He had prior obligations, so I couldn't have him as a guest tonight, but I want to thank Carl all the time. He gives me encouragement and words of wisdom about POA past, because he lived it, you know. So he was in POAs, his family, before I was even born. Not to age him, but his dad, Keith, was one of the early POA breeders. So they purchased Siri Chief in 67. Paula finally let go of him. She had leased him since 62, and in 67 she finally decided to sell him, even though she kept raising POAs, a lot of POAs. I mean, she raised some famous POAs, that we'll mention in other episodes. Some of them will have almost a full episode. But anyway, like Siri Sparkle Champagne and Siri Silver Prince, horses like that. So anyway, we'll mention those later, but they weren't related to Siri Chief. It's just, you know, Siri is a prefix, not a bloodline. It became a bloodline, but there's series that are not related to each other. So we'll get into that next week when we talk about prefixes. So Goldenrods, they raised a lot of POAs. Here's GR Siri Sundance. She became a famous mare. She's Siri Super Chief down on the bottom. So she's a great-granddaughter of Siri Chief, born in 68 at Goldenrod. So just a year after they bought Siri Chief, they already foaled out a great-granddaughter. That's how much they liked the bloodline. Here's GR Siri Moonbeam. I forgot to mention her in some things on my POA history page, which you're watching tonight live, but she was a nice mare, and filly here in this picture, and I know there's people watching tonight that owned her, so Again, if I can't remember all the names, but there's Siri Moonbeam. There's GR Siri Rebel. He became a pretty famous POA, own son of Siri Chief. GR Siri Moondust. She was owned by quite a few families. If you notice, a lot of the Siri Chiefs had pretty good necks for back in the day. Again, we were still in the 54 days, and we still had a lot of pony. Look here, you got, some unregistered stuff right there. Of course, Siri Chief's mother was a Welsh. They say Welsh Hackney on here, but I've never seen that much. Usually they just say a Welsh pony was Siri Chief's mother. Here's GR Siri Ladybug. I know there's people watching tonight that don't remember her. And her mother bounced around from POA breeders, Goldenrods, and Ray Peets owned her, I believe, for a while. She was in Appaloosa. So there you're getting a little more modern Siri Chief bred in Appaloosa. Here's Polka Dot Princess 1. This goes back to the Polka Dot farm again. Russell Officer, like I said, he had Siri Super Chief. So Polka Dot Princess, I believe, was full sister to Polka Dot Prince, who was number 39 in the breed. Registered number 39. Here's GR Siri Carbon. I figured you guys would get a kick out of some of these little baby pictures. They used to consign a lot of weanlings to the POA sale every fall. So, okay. That's not in the order I want, but anyway, we'll figure that out. So Siri Chief remained in Sheridan, Iowa. He passed away in 1973. Like I say, he had a huge impact everywhere he went. Paula Cooper, even in Minnesota for one quick year, Michigan, and then Goldenrods was such a believer in the Siri line and Siri Chief that they bred a lot of mares to him. And the Siri bloodline that helped Paula and the whole bloodline. So we're going to wrap up on Siri Chief pretty quick. I know I could talk for days. I could spend a weekend at a horse show talking about Siri Chief. There's a lot of foals I didn't mention and a lot of stuff, Saber Siri Sierra is a grandson of him that I should mention. Yieldings bred him a few spot in 75. He was one of the early few spots before few spots got really popular in Appaloosas or POAs. And he was by GR Siri Saber. And Saber Siri Sierra was his name. I wish I had pictures of him. Beautiful headed horse. He did a lot for the West Coast and all POA, the whole POA breed really. So just bear with me here. We're going to scroll through some pictures. There we go. There's Oz's Minute Maid as a baby. We talked about her earlier. She was by Polka Dot Black Blisters. And anyway, she's a famous baby. Of course, she was by Landon Sweetheart. She'll be a topic of an episode. So you had a good bottom side there too. But a funny fact here, not funny at all, but a cool fact, is in 73, Totem Spots Magella was the grand champion mare. We mentioned her earlier. 74, Star Acres Jokadot was the grand champion mare, and she was related to Siri Chief. And then in 75, this filly was the grand champion mare as a 3-year-old. So 3 years in a row for sure were up close Siri offspring, one grand champion mare at what is the Congress now. And the show was big back then too. The international show was really big in the 70s. So let's see what we got here. Okay, so a couple of horses I didn't mention was one of my favorite breeders. I never met the guy. He passed away in 2015. I wish I would have got to talk to him, speak to him. I talked to one of his daughters sitting in this office about a year ago, just on a private phone call, but was Jack Lannon in the Lannons of Nebraska. He was a veterinarian and he had a large business, cattle operation, like a feed yard or something like that. And he raised Appaloosas and POAs. His daughter didn't even really remember POAs. She was younger and they got out pretty early. But Lannon's is one of my favorite farms. They did a lot in a short time. This is Lannon Series Super Spot. This is a young picture of him. He grew up to be a bulky, stout, loud colored leopard like that. Ray Peets bought him from Lannon's at the national sale as a yearling. Paid quite a bit of money for him back then. I think like $17.50 or something. And he did a lot for the Lannons and for POAs. I mean, Kiddo Tuff's related to him. Hive Avatar's related to some of the Lannon stuff that came from there. So Anyway, there was 3 Lannon stallions that were by the polka dot horses, and that's Lannon Siri Super Spot, Lannon Siri Super Dot, who George Bishop in Utah bought, and then Lannon Siri Super Dot Borkin, who was in Colorado. Ken Bateman had him for a while. So that's three of the stallions that were all related to Siri Chief and all Lannons. Again, Lannons for sure will be an episode. I don't know who I'll get for a guest. Maybe think about it now. So, all right. So, like I say, we're wrapping up on the series. We're going to talk about them for a little while, and then we're going to get Lindsay on the phone. And this is 4 babies here that were all driftwoods. These are all by this horse. So you see when he grew up, look at these nice round babies, loud colored Ray Navis Pete's from Spencer, Iowa, bred the driftwoods POAs. Later they stopped using a prefix like Sugar Bars Dottie, and there's some more was bred by them. But then they went back to the driftwoods later on when they got to the end of their POA career. But I just put this because you see that those colored spots and stuff, they're all related to Siri Chief, all those babies. There's Lannon Siri Super Dot Minuteman after he was in Australia. That picture might have been taken here, I'm not sure. But that's when he was in Australia. And I'm sorry I can't see your comments because there's a little lag and everything, but so I can't answer you live. We may work on that later, but I hope you're enjoying the show so far. This is episode 2 of my POA podcast, Black Hand and Beyond. Of course, I'm Kent Rourke. Tonight we're talking about Siri Chief, and we're going to have a phone call from Lindsay Peaton, who grew up in Arizona, here in a little while. This is one of my favorite mares. This is Vicky 2, and they bred Vicky, Siri Chief's, one of his first daughters, who was the 16th registered POA ever. They bred her to Star Acres Firecracker, and out come Vicky 2, and that's Harold Slagle. Harold Slagle's claim to, well, he's got a lot of claim to fame, but he's really famous for breeding Hiva Avatar. His Hidden Valley was his farm, and Hiva was his prefix. But here he had Vicky 2. They owned a lot of POAs that were good, bought some good ones, raised a lot of good ones, and this is Vicky 2. So she's probably one of the more modern looking granddaughters of Siri Chief for sure, because she'd be an own granddaughter. Here's Driftwood Siri Tomahawk. A lot of POAs had Siri in their name, but they maybe weren't one generation away. They might have been 2, 3, 4 generations away. He was a grand champion in 1974. The Campbells from Minnesota, Bud showed him to his title. My family actually bought him. There's a picture of me holding him when I'm a little dude, about 10 or so. And but anyway, he was a fancy show horse, good in a cutter and stuff. He did a lot of good advertising for POAs. Never became a famous sire, but he was from the Danny Boy line. That's more his famous bloodline, but he did have Siri as his name represents. Okay, I believe this is Totem Siri Desert Knight. Hopefully I got the right one. Desert Gold and Desert Knight were grand champions back to back. This is the one Reams had. So 72 and 73, those 2 stallions were grand, and they had Siri in their name. And again, they would go back to the totems. I think Totem Siri Desert Dust or something like that was the sire. Now we're going to get into some more modern POAs that have Siri in them. Kiddo Tough for sure does. His sire Chippa was a grandson of Lannon Siri Super Spot. Here's the grand champion stallion from last year. I think, what's his name? Take Another Look or something like that. But the Burtons, and he's related to Siri Chief. I'm just trying to show how Siri Chief's blood from the early 50s is still around today. Here's Hive Avatar. He was, fairly up close to Siri Chief for being born in 79. There's Hive Avatar when he sold in 1989, broke the record. There's the Slagles again, and Jill Ellsworth, and then I believe that's, I can't think of her first name, but Hayes is her last name, the girl that rode him, and then of course Marlene Bourgeon. Olin Ziegler was the pedigree reader. Hive Avatar and Kiddo Tough were both really famous, stallions from the 80s and the 90s. Here's a colt we raised, Pikachu. He's a gelding. He was a grand champion at many Midwest shows and reserve at the International. He goes back to Siri Chief. There's the Crisco Kid, the winningest POA gelding ever at the International Show in Congress. He, of course, is Kiddo Tough, so he goes back to Siri Chief. There's Kiddo again. I always got to slip him in there. TX's Get a Clue was a grand champion mare in 2005. Guess what? She was an own daughter of Cluition, but she's related to Siri Chief on the bottom side. Great little mare. Here's a mare you'll probably recognize if you've been shown in Tulsa the last few years. Two-time grand champion mare. There's Tammy and, of course, Jackie. She's the JBJ's mare. Two-time grand champion mare. She's already made her mark in the breed. She's still a young mare. She's related to Siri Chief. I think a couple times. So I hope people don't mind me showing their horses that are related to Siri Chief, but it's an honor, really. So there's Siri Chief when he got to Sheridan, Iowa. He was probably about 16 in these pictures, so he was getting some age on him. And luckily for us, they snapped some pictures of him playing around and stuff. Otherwise, there's very few pictures of Siri Chief. There's not many around because he was down in Arizona, and the base at the time was in Iowa, and a lot of the stuff was centered around Iowa and the Midwest, and so you just didn't see many pictures of him. Okay, here's another horse that's related to Siri Chief, JN Goes to Gold, and we're going to talk about him in a minute too, because the next episode we're going to talk to the young man holding him there. So I'm going to wrap up on Siri Chief, and I hope you guys enjoyed that portion of the show. Again, this is my POA podcast, Black Hand and Beyond. So Jared next week's going to be on with Jeremy. We're going to talk about JN to JNJ. And JN is the Katzenbergers. His granddad, Jared's granddad, was in POAs in the early 60s, raised his kids. And then a lot of those kids were in POAs. Judy Katzenberger is Jared's mom. She raised her 3 boys in POAs. They all did a lot. You can see by all these trophies. And this is one of the best stallions ever in POAs as far as performance and a sire. And he's an international champion halter winner too. So we're going to be talking about him a little bit. And Jared and Jeremy and I are all going to talk about, just kind of rap about prefixes and try to make it fun. So, all right. Well, as you know, if you watched on Facebook, I am offering some sponsorships. So we did have a few sponsors this week. My Supreme champion, or my Supreme sponsor, and we have 2 of them tonight. The first one is Damon Farms from Melbourne, Iowa. And Dean actually grew up in POAs. This is Dean right here. A lot of you know him now as a board of director. He became a board of director fairly late in his POA career now. He's been in POAs since he's a kid. Eileen raised him in POAs, and she was around at the futurities and shows for years. She's on the cover of at least one magazine with their babies. This is Doc's Rough and Tough. This is a baby they bought. Again, they were in POAs a long time when they bought him as a baby from Doc Nemmers at the national sale. And Dean conditioned him, and he won Grand Champion Stallion as a yearling. He was only the third yearling stallion to ever do it. And then he came back as a 2-year-old and won. And he's still alive. Doc's Rough and Tough's still alive. And there is his son. And he's One Tough Bud. And they call him AP. They actually call the old stallion Bud. And this is AP. There's Dean again. That was at the big Midwest Regional Show in Sioux Falls in 2005. I believe he was the grand champion there. Beautiful snow cap, beautiful head. I know there's a lot of people watching that probably have offspring and he's One Tough Bud. Again, we're talking about Damon Farms from Melbourne, Iowa. They're the breeders of the Silver Kid. Dean and Janet raised 2 sons, Corey and Craig, in POAs. Corey is still very involved. He's actually the breeder of this horse, the Silver Kid. The Silver Kid, if you don't know, if you haven't been paying attention, he's the #1 leading sire of international and Congress champions. His foals have won more classes at that show than any other sire ever. Number 2 is his grandsire Kiddo, and probably, I might be wrong here, 8 or 9 is Avatar, his sire, Hive Avatar. So he comes from it naturally. He was bred to be a good stallion, And Corey bred him, and he was born in 1995. He's still standing to the public. So the Silver Kid, I could name off 20 of them easy, but you guys know most of them. So there he is again. He's already in the Hall of Fame. That's what that plaque represented. But he was shown and did a good job. Penningtons and a lot of people from Michigan and the Mid-East bred to him and raised some great ones. And now he's back in Iowa and still going strong. Here's one of his young sons. This is 50 Shades Darker. And, that's just a farm fresh shot of him there. He looks different now. He's older, but again, you can tell the conformation and stuff of what Damons strive for. They've bred for a lot of futurity winners and grand champions. They set a record breeding for the filly and colt, and the first people to do that at the Select Sire Futurity. They've bred for all 3 grand champions now, stallion, mare, and gelding. So, and they're still going strong. Corey is a young man, and he's got his family in it showing, and they still have a big group of brood mares. So if you need a young prospect or want to check out a stallion to breed to, please contact Damons in Iowa. Our next sponsor tonight is TC POAs. This is another person that grew up in POAs. Kind of a trend here, isn't it? But, POAs are so good, people want to stay in it a lot of times. So Tracy and Robert Keene. Tracy grew up as Tracy Sweet, and she's in Florida. And she's got a little gold mine right now in the stallion TC Impulsive Guido. He's actually our sponsor tonight. This is one of his foals. He won the international show as a baby, and his name is TC Double Down Guido is his name. There's TC Impulsive Guido. You want to check out the pedigree on this guy, go to All Breed Pedigree or wherever you get your pedigrees, or call Tracy or Facebook Tracy, because this dude's got a cool pedigree for a POA. DZ Guido is his sire. His dam is a full sister to a lot of great POAs. She's an own daughter of First Impulse out of a Campbell's Dreamcatcher daughter. So great pedigree. He's a great stallion. He's really making a name for himself. It's ironic, he is a solid stallion, but who cares? Most of his foals are leopards. So Tracy is the color guru of POA. She's a fellow historian like me, but I specialize in pedigrees and like who sold when for how much. She specialized in the color. She really did her research. It's ironic that this one is solid because she hasn't bred for many solids in her close to 40 plus career in POAs. So there's TC Impulsive Guido. Now he's making a name for himself at the Select Sire Futurity too. There's in 18 they won with a filly named, let's see, I gotta read it, I'm sorry. Sorry, Tracy. Anyway, TC Weeds and Roses, sorry about that. TC Weeds and Roses. She won in 18. I wasn't at that futurity. I haven't been going to the modern stuff, but I go to Tulsa. I need to go to Illinois this year and watch the futurity and probably do some live videos for this podcast. And then this is last year, of course. And this, I know this name, I believe. This is Touched by a Guido. TC Touched by a Guido. Yeah. So both by TC Impulsive Guido. Again, he's standing at stallion, and she has some babies. Some of her babies sell like that. I mean, the day they're born, they sell. So if you're interested in one of these TC Impulsive Guido babies, contact Tracy. She's the third person in that picture there. The first person in that picture holding that baby is going to be our guest tonight, Lindsay. So that's a cool photo there. So again, I want to thank our sponsors, Damon Farms and TC Impulsive Guido, standing in Florida. Okay, I got to make a phone call. So that's why I put this picture on, because while I'm fumbling around with my phone, I thought I would show one of my favorite looking mares. Now, this mare was never a grand champion at the national show or anything like that, but she maybe should have been, because she is a beautiful mare. JOF Skip a Scotch, I believe is her name. She'll correct me if I'm wrong.
Forwarded to an automated voice messaging system.
Okay, well, that didn't work. We'll try again. So, we're trying to get Lindsay on the phone here. Here we go.
Hello.
Hello. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good.
Good. You're live. I'm just warning you. So
Okay.
hopefully people. Is your mom sitting there watching this?
No, they're all out in the barn watching it.
Oh, they're out in the barn. Well, hopefully they can hear you. If somebody runs in waving their hand, that means they can't hear you. But you're on Bluetooth. You know, I'm a lot older than you, Lindsay, so I'm not good at this Bluetooth and all this technology stuff. But I'm trying to get there. So, so you're not seeing the screen, but we're looking at JOF's. Is it Skip-a-Scotch, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
I was telling our audience that I love that mare. She's one of my favorite mares of all time, and we'll talk about her a little later here. We got a lot of pictures to go through with you. The audience and I have been through Siri Chief all the way to our sponsors, and now you're an hour difference than us in Oklahoma, so I put you to the last. No offense, but because you're a little earlier in the day. So, and thank you for coming on tonight and being our guest and rearranging your schedule a little bit.
Yes.
So I don't know if you can see what we're watching, but we're looking at a little bitty girl. I mean, little bitty, and that's you, right?
Yeah, let me pull it up. It's kind of lagging on me.
Yeah, it's lagging. It's gonna lag a little, but that's your mother, and I should say it now. I've called her Diana, Princess Di, Madam President, but her name's Diana Peaton. Is your mother? Yeah, and that's her, I believe, with you in lead line. You can't be much more than 2, if that.
Yeah, I was pretty tiny there, and my diaper filled up the saddle more than anything. So.
Okay. Right? That's funny. Well, you had good posture even back then. You have good. Now, here's a little story that you probably don't even know. That filly you're on, that's Tough My Tough, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
Yeah, I'm the guy that found her in the stall. I was at the people. Yeah, the people that bred her had Kiddo Tough, and she's a Kiddo Tough daughter. And and we were there visiting to look at a newborn baby. And I started walking around Nancy, and I looked in the stall of this filly's mother, and there was a little kind of off color, looked like a little mouse. No offense, but she was tiny. And I said, "Do you guys realize you have another baby over here?" And they didn't. So that's another one of my claim to fame is I discovered Tough My Tough. So when she was a minute old, but so was she your first? She was one of your first ponies for lead line, I guess, right?
Yep, she was my first one.
Your first one. Okay. Is that her there at Spanish Fork? Is that her with you?
Yep, that is her as well. That was my first showmanship win.
Okay. Wow, look at that trophy. It's almost as tall as you, Lindsay. Wow.
As tall as the pony.
Yeah, the pony wasn't very, she was tiny. Her mother was 48 inches, a daughter of Siri, what's his name? Siri Silver Prince. That's her grandsire on the bottom side. So, yeah. Tough My Tough. She went on to have some foals and do some good too, didn't she, besides showing?
Yes, she did.
Yeah.
She really, really did.
Good. All right, we're going to move on to some... Oh, there you are with another little one, a leopard. Who's that?
That is... I think it's Duke. It's taking a little bit, but...
1998 in Tulsa at the International. I think you're right. I think it's Duke.
Yes,
What's his
DJ
register?
Little Duke.
Okay.
DJ Little Duke.
Okay. Yep, I remember him. Yep. So you moved on from her. You rode him for a while?
Yeah, I was only 5 in that picture. Riding on my own.
Yeah, your legs still ain't quite to the middle of the barrel of the horse.
And he was just a little bit taller than Tuffy. He was only 49 inches.
All right. Well, you had to move up. You were 5. It was time to move up an inch or so. And of course you moved up. How many POAs do you putting you on the spot? How many POAs do you think you've ridden in your career so far?
So I was actually writing down names as you were talking here.
Okay.
And I have 30 to count, and I'm still missing a few. So.
Okay.
Those are the ones I've shown.
And you're still going strong. You just had. Well, you don't have to say how old you are, but you just had a birthday the other day, didn't you?
Yep. 28.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. You're brave. You can say that's if I was 28, I'd say it too. I'd go, "Hey, everybody, I'm 28." I'd put the camera just on me, and I'd be bragging about it. So, okay. Well, now we're on a picture of 2 little kids. I guess you and a little boy, and they're 2 roans, nice-headed roans.
My brother.
Oh, that's your brother. What's his name? Let's give him some shout out.
That's Seth.
Okay.
He, I was always jealous. He was actually a better rider than I was.
Oh,
But
wow.
he didn't like it as much. So
Well, a
kinda
lot of
worked out
boys
my
go
way.
on to other things, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So who's he on? Who's Seth riding there?
So he's on HMH Color Me Bright, which is actually a full sibling to Socks from
Right.
last week.
From last week, yeah.
Yeah, and he was my quirky little pony.
Okay.
And then I was on Billy Bright,
Okay.
and I was on Billy Bright first, and then I moved on to Rocky HMH Color Me Bright afterwards. But I wasn't quite ready for him at that point.
Right.
We were, he was a little spookier, and he just came from a family we had before that did a lot of barrels.
Okay.
Cold.
I was gonna say, Color Me Bright. Didn't he win some game classes, like at the national? Yeah.
He won quite a bit. Him and Fox were pretty tough horses to beat.
Right. And it's funny how she's red with a flaxen mane and tail and 3 big socks or 4, whatever, and he's got dark on his legs and he's a roan. They're the complete opposites, and they're full brother and sister.
Yep.
Yeah. And Billy Bright, I remember him too. He came from. Did Myers breed him?
Honestly, I'm not too sure. All I know is we bought him from California. I was so little at that point, but
right.
Sure, my mom's out there in the barn yelling at me.
Oh, she's
she's probably like,
yeah, she's probably And I've slipped a lot. 20 years from now, I could name every Grand Champion stallion, every Select Sire Futurity winner, but then time gets away from you. So, and I just haven't been paying attention as much. Now here we are. You're not in this picture, but your mom's holding this beautiful mare in 2002 at the sale, and her breeder, Siri Ogden, standing in the picture. And I use this picture for advertising POAs all the time, and for advertising my podcast. And just tell me some stuff about her. We're going to look at several pictures of her kind of in between, because you kind of jumped on other horses in between, it looks like, too. But what's her barn name? What's her nickname?
So her name's Penny. She went through a few of them. I think she was Skippy when we got her, and we had a horse down the street named Skippy, so we changed that. And then Darren Vincent had her in California, and they called her Betty, but her name was Bad Betty for a while, so we decided to change that, so that nickname didn't stick.
Okay.
And then it's Penny, so because I was young when I got her, so to me she looked like a penny, the color.
Right.
But my mom was completely obsessed with her when she was younger, and I think she won it as a weanling as well.
She won the Select Sire Futurity as a weanling. Yep. I think she's 2 in this picture, and and I remember Cherie brought her to a show, and Burton's had a mare there that went grand, I think, and she walked up to me and she goes, "Is that mare the same age as my mare?" And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "It's too bad, because they're the 2 of the best mares in the last 10 years at the show." But she won as a baby, and that's good that a Select Sire Futurity winner went on to do so much as a rider, and retain her looks too. She kept her looks. So
yes, she did.
I'm probably going to skip over a photo here. There she is at the Reichert celebration. I think that's her, right?
I have 2 Reichert. Hold on. It'll come to me. I think we have 2 Reichert pictures.
2010.
Yep, that's her at 2010.
Okay, so that's a long way past when you guys got her, because you got her in, what, 02? So, yeah.
So she had Penny when she was 5. So in 2005, or maybe she was 5 or 6, like right around there, she actually had colic surgery.
Okay.
That was pretty severe, and so I took a year off from there, and that's where I was riding those other ones in between. I think you saw that picture.
Right there. There's 3 roans, and you're leaning on the middle one.
Yep. And that was the year I showed them.
Okay.
And then she had another, or that was the year she actually ripped her foot open. She ripped her cornet band all open. So she was in a cast at home. So it was a couple years before then is when she had her colic surgery.
Okay.
So she had to take some time off. And, of course, both of her surgeries weren't, 6 weeks. It was 6 months to 8 months of time off. So.
Right. Well,
She
this
kinda,
picture here we're looking at, you won so many denim jackets you could have started a clothing store. There's at least 5, and it's the photos. I cropped the photo. There might be more, and that's at
Yep.
the Reichert celebration. So that was great advertising for the POAs. It's hard to
Yep.
believe that was 11 years ago already.
I can't believe it. I know.
Yeah, I'm not trying to make you feel old. This is supposed to be a happy show. Again, I'm going to skip over one, and just since we're talking about here she is in 2012 at the Congress, and
Yep.
you got a bunch of swag in front of you there too.
Mm-hmm.
So now I don't
That
want to bring
was-
up any. Is she still around, Miss Mary?
Yes, she is.
Okay.
She doesn't. She kind of looks her age now. She's
Okay.
just hanging out. And my yearling ate her tail, so she doesn't look as pretty
Oh wow.
right now.
Yeah.
But she doesn't mind. She's enjoying her life and just kind of hanging out. And
Right. And she never had any babies or anything.
we tried breeding her, but she just wasn't taking. And my mom, we're all really superstitious over here, so
Right.
we're like, if it wasn't meant to be, it wasn't meant to be.
Right. Well, a lot of famous show mares. I mean, they were not, are really famous, like Kenwell's barmaid and this mare. I mean, and Sox was only bred once, and she produced a good colt, but they only tried once, you know. And a lot of famous mares, that's what they were meant to be, were show mares, you know. So they weren't
Yeah.
meant to be brood mares. Okay, we're gonna slip back. Here's in Fort Worth, 2011. You're with a cute-headed little roan.
Oh, yeah.
Who's that?
That is Daisy Duke.
Daisy Duke. Okay. Yeah, I'm connected to her too because the people
Yes.
bred her mom to my family's Appaloosa. My dad and brother Kirk and I bought him as a baby and raised him up, and then when we got out, he was still a young stud, or otherwise I think he would have made his mark. But she had a great mother. She actually was more feminine built than her mother, or you know, and her sire was a husky Appaloosa stallion. But okay,
Yeah.
Daisy Duke. She ended up getting a lot taller than she is in that picture, unless you're.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a giant, which doesn't help, but she's about 55 and a half, I want to say.
Right. Yeah.
But when I broke her out, she was 3. So She
Okay.
was just so petite.
Okay.
And I didn't want to, like, push her or anything. And
Right.
I really liked her. I have a lot of fun with her. She had the cutest face out of all the horses I've ever had.
Right.
This darling little head. And
Right.
I'll never forget, I had a judge tell me I got like last in a halter class, and there's only like 4 or 5 of us. It wasn't like a big class.
Right.
And I went up to him and I was like, what did you not like about her? Was there something I could change? Was it her hair coat or what's going on? He's like, I didn't really like her face. And
Oh
I was so
wow.
offended.
Yeah.
I was so offended.
She has that expressive eye. It rolls down a little bit, but that kind of became the trend, you know, and a
Yeah.
beautiful head. Yeah. I got to give a shout out to her breeder, Carrie Gervais from Minnesota. Bred her Plaudits mare from the Victors, a really nice bay mare to our Appaloosa stallion. I got stories about everything, Lindsay, but I was at the Congress, I guess you call it now, in Tulsa a couple years ago, and I recognized this mare. It was Daisy Duke. And I thought I recognized her, and a girl was sitting on her. I'm sorry, I don't remember her name, but I said, "What's the name of your pony?" And I think she said it right away, not a barn name. And I might have said, and she said Daisy Duke. So I went on and told my story. Well, I walk away. Well, as I'm walking away, her mother comes running. "What did that man ask you? What did that man ask you?" I think it was people from Oregon. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they had her.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, and she goes, "Sir, sir." And I turned around and we had like a half an hour conversation. Great conversation. She was so excited. I ended up sending them some pictures of her, I think, or pictures of the sire anyway. And so, yeah, somebody wrote on here live tonight that they thought she was in Alabama now. I don't know if that's true or not, but
Yes, she is.
okay.
She ended up coming back down. The family in Oregon had her, and then they were getting out of it. And one of the girls that rides at my barn, Lexi Larson, ended up kind of riding her to keep her going and help sell her. And
Okay.
rode her 1 year at Congress, did phenomenal with her, and sold her to a little kid in Alabama, and they just do wonderful. So
Good. That's great.
That's where I like to see my pony.
And you
So,
started her, right? I mean, you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
Yep.
So, boy, she's a traveler. Born in Minnesota, went to Arizona, went to the Northwest. Now she's in Alabama. She's got a lot of stamps on her POA passport. So I'm going to go back to Okay, you're younger here in 2007, and it's a cool shot here. You're in jeans, and you're with these three roans. Two of them are pretty headed. One we won't talk about, but I'm sure it's a great POA. I just offended some breeding program, but can you tell me who these POAs are?
So Coffee Bar Gold is the farthest to the left.
Okay.
He was actually, he showed against Penny when Darren Vincent had him. Darren had started him out. Shannon from California,
Yeah.
Shannon Knight had him and did a bunch and showed him and, all the ages as Penny did. But Katie
He's
Fisher,
bred by the Rogers, I believe, Jan and Dean, I think, from
Yes.
Iowa. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember him.
Now, that was the year that Penny got hurt. And
Okay.
Rocky, my, HMH Color Me Bright, he was scared of cones, so he wasn't much of a pattern horse for me.
Okay.
So I had Rocky, which was really going mainly for my games. That's what he traveled with me for. And then Max, which was Coffee Bar Gold, they let me use him in just some pattern classes.
Okay.
And then I feel so bad, but he does have a jug head. Jimmy at the end. It's RBR Plot at Jim.
Oh wow, they're friends of mine too. Bagwells, well, they're one of the great breeders, so they can have a bad headed once in a while. They had some great futurity winners, so yeah.
They actually told us one year when I was at this show, when I was showing him, they were like looking at him. They're like, we never bred that mare back because of the head. So I mean, they know it too.
Right, but he ended up, being a mount and being a good POA. So it's not always about the head. I like, looking at a pretty face on a POA, but I didn't realize Color Me Bright had that dishy of a face.
Oh, he had the cutest little face.
He does, yeah. I remember him as a baby, and I remember him after you had him too. So, okay, we're going to go through now. Let's see, that's the Congress. We talked about that one. Okay, we're jumping forward here. I don't know if I can see the year to help you out, but we're in Lake St. Louis. It's a Futurity 2014, maybe? You're on a leopard.
Okay. Yes. That is good old Reggie, the Rainbow Kid.
The Rainbow Kid, okay.
Yep. He was my first real futurity horse. I had one right before him that I got from the Spencers. That was the Dame.
Okay.
And I bought her as a yearling and I had him as a weanling. And I moved up, started working with him. He wasn't much of a lunge line horse. He was so lazy, but gosh, he was pretty. So it was nice to look at him.
Right.
And
he was, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, that year we did the Congress in Tulsa and then went here for the Futurity, and he was just the easiest going animal I've ever ridden in my life. And he's just so cool. And
good. I like to hear that.
I think I was crying before this picture because the Gross family bought him from me at the Congress.
Okay.
And I knew after this class, this was my last class on him, and I won it. So after it, I was crying even more because I didn't want to let him go. But,
right. But he was a Futurity horse by then, so yeah. What year did you age out, Lindsay?
I aged out in 2012.
Okay, so this was one of your first. We used to call it JPFC. Do they still call it JPFC? I guess they do, don't they? Yeah.
They still have some JPFC classes. So, and this was one my mom had bought at the sale, and she didn't realize. Well, I think Jackie came running up to her. She's like, that's my, my breeding. Got a kid of bounce, and
right.
I mean,
he
really.
Yeah, the Rainbow Kid. Yeah, he was Larry Gibson, I believe, got a mare from Jackie.
Larry.
Yeah, and the Rainbow Kid. So, yeah, if Jackie would have named him, he would have had 2 D's at the end because she did that to differentiate from Kiddo Tough and Kiddo Bounce. So, okay, we're gonna move on to another picture. We're getting kind of modern now. So, are you seeing the picture? Your mom's in this picture, and Sean and her husband. She's holding the baby.
Yes. This
Okay.
was this year, right?
Right. Yeah. I think it was. Yeah, it's small print. They got POA big, but everything else is little. So there's high points and champions and all kinds of stuff around you. So so who are you riding there?
This is one of Mike and Sean's ponies. His name's LP Dude's Irish Diamond, or Chance.
Yeah.
Because they bought him by chance.
Okay.
He is one of my favorite horses I've ever ridden. And I think Sean's going to take him next year and ride him for herself. But I've had the pleasure of riding him since he was a 2-year-old. And he's just one of those that gives his all the time. But he's so goofy that you're never bored.
Right.
He's just really a cool horse, and he tries, and he's just, I love my sorrels. I have Penny, so.
Right. That's my favorite. When I was a breeder, I wanted to breed, I call it red, but sorrel or chestnut with a white blanket. That was my classic.
Mm-hmm.
Leopards were cool and everything else, and black and palomino, but sorrel with a blanket was my go-to. So.
Yeah. He's just so pretty.
He's been around a while now. Did you start him too, basically, or you did most of the training on him, right?
Yep, he's been with me.
Okay.
I started him out March of his 2-year-old year, and he's 5 this year.
Okay.
And he's the smoothest animal. He's also the whitest for his size. You feel like you're sitting on a barrel. No wither or anything to him.
Yeah, he's a stout POA. He looks like gonna be an all-around, just one of those iron geldings, you know what I mean, that can do it all and just keeps plugging away. But he's pretty to look at too, and he's holding his color well. And I always loved his sire. The Doc had 2 stallions born in '09, and one became the famous chocolatey colt, and then the other one was never shown that I know of. Maybe later in life he was, because Sean ended up buying him, I think, didn't she? But when he was gilded. Yeah. But he was a cool stallion. I seen pictures of both of those. Doc would send me, like at 3 months, 6 months, and I got to watch him grow up. And I was hoping some of his foals would go on into good hands like yours and become well known, because he was a good looking stallion. So who else is in the picture?
Oh, that little one. So, oh my God, Sean's going to kill me. This is Sean's new one. I'm trying to remember her name. Her name is Charlotte.
Okay.
Oh God, kill me.
Where did she? Do you remember where she came from? Maybe I can guess it.
Yeah, I do. I can't remember it right now because I'm on the spot.
Well, that's fine.
Her mare Clay Hill. So she's a Clay Hill.
Okay. So she's probably a Doc's Rough and Zip, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's out. That mare. She has that Clay Hill Scarlet Mist. And this is a half sister to her.
Okay, that was the leopard mare that Sean had. Did you ride her too? Didn't you for a while?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, she's a good mare. So I'm giving. Go ahead.
It's Clay Hill Fancy Affair.
Oh, good. I feel better now. We got that in there. Clay Hill Fancy Affair. So yeah, Clay Hill is Maxine and Chuck Shackleton from Iowa. And they've been POA breeders for a long time, pretty much based around Doc's Rough and Zip, a rough and tough son. And they've produced a lot of great Clay Hills, some good leopards like that mare you're talking about. This filly looks like she's got a lot of chrome on her. So.
Oh, yep. She is. Sean has a way of picking horses.
She does.
Her and mine, they will sit there. They won't buy it if they're not 100%, but I've never seen an ugly one in their hands, that's for sure. Not that any horse is ugly, but they
well, I know, yeah. She has a good eye. Is what you call a good eye. She definitely does. Yeah. I haven't got to talk to her much, but Sean, but every time I do, sometimes she'll come and talk to me in Tulsa, or I'll look her up, and it's an enjoyable conversation. So.
Yeah.
It's just another thing that makes POA so great. You can know people from California and Arizona, and then New York and Florida, and I grew up in Minnesota, and you just get to talk to people, and then you start after POAs, you start talking about weather and just different things. From you're so far away from each other. So tonight's early topic, Lindsay, was Siri Chief, and he started out in Oregon, but then as a 2-year-old he went to Arizona. So I subtitled this a couple a couple Arizona kids. You were born in Arizona, weren't you? Or not?
Yeah,
okay.
born and raised.
Born and raised. So Siri Chief wasn't born there, but he got famous in Arizona. So I wanted to make sure your mom didn't bust me and say, no, I lived in California or something for a while. So
I mean, she was when she was little, but not.
That's where I was born. I was born in Long Beach, California, but I grew up in Minnesota. So what's your future plans with POAs now? Kind of plug what you're doing down the road. What are you getting ready? Are you training some stuff?
Well, I currently have too many to even count. I was out riding till about 11:30 last night. I have so many on my property. But I have the yearling that I got from Tracy last year. And you weren't lying when you said she sells them fast.
Right.
For sure.
That's the one. Yeah, I had that picture earlier. Yep, she was a
Yeah.
sponsor. Yeah.
Yeah, she sells them before they're dry. They hit the ground and they've already had a new owner.
Right, and a lot of that's because of that sire. He's one of the good ones. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I'll have her. I just got a couple from Aaron down in Texas. I'm helping get the fourth, which is Taylor's pony, all trained up and
Okay.
get him going a little better for her. And I have a lot of ponies. I'll have more ponies than anything, but helping a couple other breeds and stuff as well. And
Okay.
Kayla, she's gonna love that I said her name, but Kayla Bird in Oklahoma, she keeps trying to get me to come out and do a clinic again. So I'm trying to keep busy as much as I can, and I'm always riding, and
Right.
hopefully I can get little Winnie up and showing next year. But
That's
I've
the
done a lot
TC
of
one.
showing. Yep.
No.
Yep. Oh yeah, Winnie. Sorry, I called by.
No, that's all right.
But I mean, I have plans. They are hopefully slowing down a little bit because I am so busy. But one of my biggest things that I've loved so much to watch the last couple of years is seeing people I've helped out actually get out and ride. My mom, speaking of Rainbow Kid, we bought him back a couple of years ago for her. So she has him out there, and she's really getting serious and wants to show and go do stuff. So we hit a lot of open shows. And
Your mom's gonna show him?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
When he was 2 years old, and the girl, Megan Hansen, came up to me and asked if he was for sale. And, I was like, yeah, every horse is for sale,
Right.
Wasn't thinking that she was literally going to have someone interested right then and there. And when I called my grandma and told her, I have someone willing to buy, and she's like, that's what you do. You buy and sell for somebody else. I was like, okay, sold them. And I was so sad. Because I really liked him. I enjoyed showing, and I think my mom was more sad because she's like, that would have been a good one for me.
Right.
So,
well, now she gets a chance to show him, and we won't say the age group, but.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, my mom's been doing good with him, and
Good.
He's lazy, but that's okay. We like lazy. She says the older you get, the lazier you want. So
Right.
We'll take it.
Well, that's the kiddo bounce, kiddo toughs. A lot of those were so lazy. When I'd go to lunge them, their heads would be down and they just look tired, And then I discovered, hey, that's what people want. So that was good. Yeah. Yeah.
I had one kiddo bounce that was a little funkier than the rest. I've had 5 total that I've worked with.
Wow.
And yeah, I just love them. They're one of my favorites. But I've had 5 total, and there was only one of them that was funky. And I mean, anyone who knows him knows that he was kind of a little spunky thing when he was a weanling, and he was probably the coolest little guy I've ever did in hand stuff with. And I unfortunately didn't get much of a chance to train or to show him myself because I was in hygiene school at the time, so I didn't get to go travel and show. So my mom and one of the novice riders rode him and won the novice award on him. But he challenged you a little bit.
Right.
Too small.
Right. Well, hey, they all can't be perfect, right? But
exactly.
so you're what do you do for a career then?
I'm a dental hygienist.
Okay, cool.
So I clean teeth by day and ride ponies by night.
Okay, well, I'm not smiling now because I don't want you to look at my teeth, but
you're cool.
So that's cool. So yeah, you work hard, play hard, because showing these ponies is hard work, and you do really well. That's why I wanted to bring you on, because last week we had a girl that grew up in POAs, of course, and now she has a stables and stuff, and that's Ashley, and now you're and then the Arizona tie. I just thought it'd be cool to I don't know if you and I've ever had a conversation, but I just thought it'd be cool. So. No, I've talked to your mom. We were both board of directors. She was president for a while of the board, right?
Yeah, for quite some time.
Quite some time, yeah. So, and we won't get into that tonight. That's a whole nother. Politics is a different podcast. So POA politics. Somebody else can take that on. So Tracy or somebody. But all right. I think, let's see. Am I at the end of the? Yeah, I'm at the end of the pictures. So you sent me a bunch of pictures, and I took 12 of them. So thank you for sending those. And I just want to remind the audience we were talking to Lindsay. We're still talking to Lindsay Peaton from Arizona. She grew up in POAs, and she still gets some ready for people and herself. And her mom's going to be riding one of them that she rode as a girl, so that's cool. Or actually, you rode it as in your futurity, right? When you got out.
Yep.
So, yeah. And
I was 19. I was still a kid.
yeah, you were a girl. 19's a girl to me, so for sure. And I just always admired how you presented your horses and stuff. That's one of the reasons I wanted to have you as a guest on Black Hand and Beyond. So I hope people are understanding the Black Hand and Beyond, you know, its history and what's going on today. So I want to cover, you know, topics of the past, present, and future. So, well, I want to thank you for being my guest. I hope your mom and all the barn people out there liked it. So tell them, come on in. What's the temperature in Arizona right now? 80?
Well, no, it actually snowed about an hour away from us. So
Oof.
we got a little rain, but it's still, I don't know what it is. Hold on. I don't know, 60 maybe.
Oh, wow. I was going to come visit, but I might not now. Arizona, I want 80s if I'm going to be out there. So.
Yeah, 61. So, I mean, we're in jackets because we can handle it. But.
Yeah, 61. I grew up in Minnesota. 61, you go for a jog in athletic shorts, but for sure. So, all right, Lindsay, thanks again for being a guest, and I hope to see you in Tulsa.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, have a good night.
Bye.
Bye. All right, everyone. That was Lindsay Peaton from Arizona. That ties in our Siri chief that was in Arizona for a long time, and this great POA exhibitor who grew up in POAs. And I hope you enjoyed seeing all the pictures of hers. We'll kind of go through them again here real fast. And we're about ready to wrap up the show. We've been on air for, not quite, let's see, an hour and a half or so. So that's a pretty good show. Whenever you have good subjects like this, you could talk for hours about this stuff. So it's kind of funny, the little connections you find out when you talk to somebody. So again, I want to thank my sponsors, TC Impulsive Lido, stallion standing in Florida, one of the great young stallions. Here's some of his babies. And here he is. There's another one of his babies. He's hiding in the bushes back there. So he's standing at TC POA's, a famous POA place in Florida, Tracy and Robert Keene. And here's one of the young Damon prospects. This is 50 Shades Darker. He's a son of the Silver Kid, the #1 sire ever. He's a living legend, but he's still going. 1995, very great pedigree, and like I say, the top sire of all time. There he is in the Hall of Fame. And there is Dean with He's One Tough Bud, a colt they raised, just like the Silver Kid. And of course, very touching to my heart, Rough and Tough, Doc's Rough and Tough. And he's been a mainstay. He's still alive. Born in 1989. He's still alive. He's not breeding anymore, but Doc's Rough and Tough, 2-time grand champion. So again, thanks to Damon Farms in Melbourne, Iowa. Check them out for some prospects. And also TC Impulsive Lido. I want to thank everybody for watching tonight. Next week, we're going to have fun with a couple wild guys. Jared from Wisconsin and Jeremy from Kansas. Maybe I can get us all on here, maybe even pictures. I don't know. They might not want to be on live, but they can talk to us for sure. And we're going to talk about prefixes. There's been how many prefixes in the POAs, and I'm going to show you some that I tried and didn't work out, some funny prefixes. Hopefully you enjoy that. So tune in next week. This will be on YouTube here in a little while, and it's always on Facebook. So I want to thank everyone for watching, all the comments, and please tune in next week for my POA podcast, Black Hand and Beyond. Good night, everyone.
My BFF is a POA. We go together.
not around, is he? He's probably left. Did Shane leave? That's all right. He probably did. Oh, Bluetooth's probably on.
You've reached Shane Jackson. I'll get back with you.
I didn't use the Winnies. Hey, Shane. Let's see, I think I'm still Bluetooth. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Are you still broadcasting?
No, I'm done. I just wanted to see how to get this turned off. I wanted to turn this computer off right.
Wait till did you put upload to YouTube?
I didn't, no. You want to walk me through that or not?
Well, have you already finished the broadcast?
I finished the broadcast, yep.
On the screen, does it say upload to YouTube?
I think I finished it. I hope I'm not still going live.